Okay, recording. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Doctor. So this is our presentation on building contracts. So I will now share the screen. Okay, so I will pass the floor to TASNEEM.
All right, so we will be presenting on the question of on the law on delegation, precisely on the subcontractor. Next. So the flow for our presentation will be, the first we will start with the introductions. Next, we will move to the law. Next, we will move to the first legal issue and the second legal issue. Next. So firstly, what is a subcontractor? So basically, a subcontractor is a type of contractor whereby the subcontractor also works on a contractor basis like a contractor. And they also offer a particular set of skill which they need to do or to perform for the client. So the key point for a subcontractor is that they will form an agreement with the contractor and not with the customer. And the subcontractor usually specialize in one specific area of constructions, and they will try to connect with the contractor who negotiate with for a larger jobs that include the area that the subcontractor specialize. So basically, a successful contractor will actually always have the works because they have the network to contractor. Subcontractor may be an individual or a business. In most of the cases, they are not considered as an employee of the contractor, but rather an independent contractor. So depending on the subcontractor agreement, they may be responsible for providing their own materials and equipment for the tasks that they are hired for. Next, we will move to the functions of subcontractor. Next. So basically, there's a lot of functions of subcontractor, but here we will only focus on three main functions of subcontractor, whereby the first is subcontractor will enable the main contractor to undertake more complex projects without increasing their risk. However, the concern about subcontractor is that the main contractor has a less control over the skills and training of subcontractor employees. So because of this, they may be a negative impact on the quality and health and also the safety on the site. Second, functions of subcontractor is that they will help the contractor to do the works which has been assigned to them from the client by delegating some of the works to subcontractor. So normally, the contractor will delegate the works to subcontractor in the area that they specialize. So by this way, it will reduce the contractor works. Next is Next, the third functions of the subcontractor is that when the subcontractor work as a subcontractor, there are certain things that subcontractor needs to do when working with the general contractor, whereby the first is subcontractor must maintain their communication with the contractor. Second, they must adhere with the policies and procedure that has been set out. And the third, they must participate in the safety measures or events. Next, we will move to the types of subcontractor. So generally, there are three types of subcontractor, which are first, domestic subcontractor, second is nominated subcontractor, and the third is named subcontractor. So basically, domestic subcontractor is a subcontractor which has been selected and appointed by the main contractor to supply or to fix any material or execute a work which form part of the main contract. While nominated subcontractor is a subcontractor which has been selected by the client to carry out an elements of the works, and then the client will later negotiate a price with the nominated subcontractor, and then they will instruct the main contractor to actually appoint them for those works. Next is named subcontractor. So basically, named subcontractor is generally the same as the domestic subcontractor, whereby they will appointed by the main contractor itself. All right.
So we pass the floor to TISHA.
Hello, my name is QISTINA, and now I will be discussing on the law that governs delegation to subcontractors. So basically, there isn't exactly a legislation that governs such a matter, which is why we have to make recourse to the standard forms, which are the PWD and PAM, basically the Public Works Department and the Subcontractor Delegation. Okay, next. Now, before I proceed, I would like to highlight the difference between subcontractor and nominated subcontractor. So, of course, my co-presenter has already explained the various types of subcontractor, but in regards to explaining the law on delegation, we would like to narrow down the types into only subcontractor and nominated subcontractor. So basically, a subcontractor is someone who is of the contractor's choice. So therefore, the consent needs to come from the superintending officer or the employer. As for the nominated subcontractor, they are the chosen ones, meaning to say that they are ones who are appointed by the superintending officer or by the architect themselves, and there is actually no need for the main contractor to obtain consent, and there's no choice on the part of the main contractor. They have to work with the nominated subcontractor. All right, next. So these are basically the clauses found in the standard forms that govern the law on delegation for subcontractors. Next. We will start first with PWD, which is Public Works Department. Under clause 47, it basically says, well, actually clause 47 has a lot of things to say, but let's just summarize it very simply to say that basically whatever the contractor wants to delegate something to the subcontractor, there needs to be consent, even if it is something falling under clause 22, which is a design liability, or even if the contractor wants to delegate the whole of the contract or a substantial part of it, there should be a consent. And clause 47 also explains that the contractor shall be fully responsible to all the acts and defaults by the subcontractor. Right, so moving on to clause 60, this is a clause that governs the law delegation for nominated subcontractors, in which the superintending officer shall obtain tenders for nominated subcontractor services, and such contractor needs to enter into such subcontracts with the chosen ones. Right, so for clause 63, this is a clause that governs for both subcontractor and nominated subcontractor, in which saying that the main contractor will have to take full responsibility when there are subcontractors by making sure that they actually conform with the terms and conditions. And this also comes along with the liability, in which that they also have to take full responsibility of everything that the subcontractors do. Let's say there's a defect or if there is a neglect, then all of this responsibility falls under the main contractor. Next. Right, so for the contractor's obligation under the PAM, which is the Persatuan Architect Malaysia, there are only two main clauses, which are clause 17 and clause 27. Under clause 17, it says, you know what, it's basically the same thing, in which that the contractor still needs to obtain the written consent by the employer in order to subcontract. But this is the tiny bit difference under the PMM and with PWD, in which it is not possible for the main contractor to subcontract wholly or substantially the main contract. Right, so under clause 27, it says that when the architect appoints a nominated subcontractor, they are employed by the contractor. And this is the similarity that it shares with PWD, in which the main contractor has no say in this, and that they actually have to work with the subcontractors that are nominated by the architect themselves. And there's also another similarity over here, in which the responsibility to ensure that all subcontractors carry out all the works. Those are basically the general clauses governing the law of delegation for subcontractors that can be found under the standard forms. That's all.
All right. So now moving on to my part of the issue, which is we will firstly discuss on the delay and extension of time for nominated subcontractors. Before that, guys, can you guys see my face on your screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the first issue that we decide to discuss is on the delay and extension of time for nominated subcontractors. The reason why we choose this issue is mainly because when we read the article by H. Abdul Rahman on delay mitigation in Malaysian construction industry, it was mentioned that the main problems of subcontractors have been identified as one of the most important causes contributing to the delays in Malaysian construction industry. Subcontractors was quoted as one of the most common causes of construction delays in Malaysia construction industry. In other words, delay and extension of time when it comes to subcontractors is actually very, very common that we feel the need to discuss about it. So in general, in regards to extension of time granted to nominated subcontractors, it should be noted that the general legal principle are similar to the head contractors, like how we learned extension of times before. Now, the difference would, however, be on the procedural aspects of this procedural aspect of it, and also on the contractual relationship as well as on the obligations of the subcontractors. Now, on the delay for nominated subcontractors, the relevant laws that I refer to has to be firstly on the clause 30 of the GKR form on delays and extension of time. These are the forms that are specifically for subcontractors. The first clause is clause 30.1, which is notice of delay, whereby it mentioned that upon it becoming reasonably apparent that the subcontract works is delayed, the nominated subcontractor shall give a written notice of the cause of delay in the progress or completion of the subcontract works or any section thereof. In other words, that once they can foresee ataupun they or it becomes quite apparent that there will be a delay, the subcontract must quickly give a written notice on the cause of delay. Clause 30.2 mentioned on the extension of time, whereby it mentioned that subject to clause 19, and if subcontract could obtain extension of time, the contractor shall be with permission of the superintending officer grant a fair and reasonable extension of time to the said period or periods. All right. Now, in regards to another basically laws that we can look at is PAM Subcontract 2016. In clause 21, they actually explain more details as to how can a subcontractor apply for extension of time. If you read I did not give the details here, but if we read through it, they even mention a specific days of when a person should give the written clause and request of extension of time, and also when should a contractors give permission after they receive the notice from the subcontractors. But in general, the normal procedures based on the textbook of Sundaraju, it was mentioned that a typical extension of time procedures involve the nominated subcontractors notifying of any delay with a copy also being sent to the contract administrator. The contractor would then review the application before forwarding the same to the contract administrator. The contract administrator will assess the application and communicated his decision to the contractor, who then grants the commensurate extension of time to the nominated subcontractors concerned. Now, in most cases, it is the contract administrators the one, and it is not the contractor who decide whether the nominated subcontractor is entitled to extension of time, and if so, what is the quantum, right? So contractors can only permit grant of extension of time written in consent by the contract administrator. In other words, if the contract administrator do not give the permission or do not allow for the extension of time, then the contractors basically cannot proceed in giving the grant of extension of time to the subcontractors. Now, if the subcontractors fail to grant the extension of time, or the subcontractors is aggrieved by the quantum of extension of granted, then most subcontractors will make adequate provision for the latter to pursue the prescribed dispute resolution process either on his own or jointly with the contractors. These are the case when they cannot receive the permission to have extension of time by the permit of the contract administrator. So that is all on first issue. Second issue for Filzah.
Moving on to the second issues, which is issues on payment. In the construction industry, payment is the sum of money that the main contractor or client paid to the subcontractor after his work is completed with a satisfied quality. If the subcontractor did not receive his payment on time, the subcontractor's work can be strictly stopped and delayed due to the insufficient cash flow to provide the materials for the project. Next. The issues on payment is that it's either the subcontractor has completed their work but they did not receive the payment, or during the construction work took place, they did not receive the payment. So these are the laws which is before SIPA and after SIPA was enacted in order to safeguard the subcontractor's payment. Before SIPA was enacted, the clause that is used is that pay if paid or pay when paid provision. The subcontractor will only be paid by the contractor after the contractor has received the payment from under pay if paid, the subcontractor will only be paid by the contractor after the contractor has received the payment from the client. While for pay when paid provision, this clause provides a reasonable period of time for the subcontractor to get his payment. This could be extremely unfair to the subcontractor because the subcontractor will not receive payment although he had completed his work satisfactorily. While after these two clauses has brings a lot of problems to subcontractors because they did not get the payment. While after SIPA is enacted, it is actually an act enacted by government to the subcontractor in solving the payment dispute. The unpaid parties such as subcontractor has a statutory right to claim for payment on work done under SIPA. And under SIPA, the practice of using pay if paid and pay when paid provision are also being banned because it is unfair for the subcontractor. Well, generally it is required approximately 90 days to complete the adjudication process. The adjudicator may be appointed by the Director of Kuala Lumpur, which is KLRCA is the adjudicator for SIPA. Next. This is the issues on payment on how can what can the subcontractor do if during the work they did not receive their payment. Under PAM subcontract, if contractor fails to pay amount to the subcontractor and the subcontractor has given written notice after 14 days by hand or registered post, the subcontractor may suspend the subcon work until the payment is made. Meaning to say that the subcontractor only resume their work after contractor has paid to them. While under PWD form 203N, payment to nominated subcon is subjected to clause 37, which will be discussed after this. And under PWD, government should pay the nominated subcontractor provided that the government should not be liable to the subcontractor in any cases. As for the final payment can only be made to nominated subcontractor if the work done by them is satisfied by the contractor or SO and the work is free from any defects. So next, that's all from us. Thank you.
So generally that is all. We will stop the presentation here. Wait. Stop share.